welcome to Moments with Marilyn. I'm your host, Marilyn Boyer, the mom of 14 homeschool kids who love the Lord and love each other. We have an exciting podcast for you today. We're going to interview Tracy Klicka of HSLDA. Her husband was Chris Klicka, who was a lawyer for HSLDA for many years. And we are going to address the topic of homeschooling through tough times. And Tracy is just an amazing person who has had a journey that has included many struggles, including having twins and her own health issues and a husband with MS. So I know you will get a blessing out of listening to her share today. Thanks for joining us. I am so excited today to introduce you guys to Tracy, my dear friend. And I don't remember how long ago we met Tracy. It's been many years. I think Rick and I met your dear husband, Chris, on the speaking circuit before we met you. But then Chris and Rick developed a sweet friendship through the years. And we've been in your home and you've been in our home. And we've grown to know and love your family. I know Rick considered Chris his best friend, and he just felt privileged to know him and observe his incredible testimony as he faced dealing with MS, which eventually took him to heaven. But also, we watched you day in and day out. You not only ministered to Chris with his ever-increasing needs, but you nurtured and you taught your children in the home. And I just thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you're going to be a blessing to so many moms out there watching.
Oh, thank you, Marilyn. It's a real honor and privilege to join you in this, especially because we do go back so far and our friendship has been so special, a very special part of our family's lives. So thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. I remember that time we blew up a bunch of balloons in my living room and we were batting them around the living room, and Chris couldn't participate, but he was standing there watching. And
yes, and in fact, that's a memory I have. It was a tradition that you have for birthdays,
right?
That you have a balloon toss, right? And so
yeah.
We happened to catch you in your home. It was one of your kids' birthdays, and so we felt both honored and just thrilled to join in the fun. So
it was wild and crazy. Arms going everywhere, bopping the balloons around, but it was so much fun. And Chris enjoyed every minute of it, I think.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your family, Tracy. How many kids do you have? Grandkids?
Yep. So interestingly enough, I grew up with just one sibling, and Chris was an only child, but God had wonderful plans in store for us, and he gave us 7 children, and including a set of twins in there. And there's some stories I'll share a little bit more, I think, probably in this podcast about some of our family, experiences in that. I currently have 5 grandchildren, and most of my kids are local. So I'm loving this season of being a Mimi and sort of teaching the grandkids, mostly building special memories with them. You get to I feel like being a grandparent is a reward for parenting because you get to have all these fun experiences with your grandkids that doesn't involve maybe as much work as parenting, so.
And it's so helpful to your kids too, to have you do that fun stuff with them that they kind of don't get around to doing.
That's right. My kids are really supportive of me having those times, with my grandkids. So
special. What led you and Chris to homeschool your kids? I mean, I know you did it back before very many people were doing it. What led you to that decision?
Yeah, so there's a really interesting story there. We didn't know anything about homeschooling until Chris was in law school. I was an undergraduate at Oral Roberts University. He was in the law school there. And it was after his second year of law school when a lot of law students are looking for internships in that. And that semester before that final summer before graduating from law school, he was given an opportunity to intern with an organization called the Rutherford Institute. And it's a constitutional law organization headed by John Whitehead, who I believe still heads that organization.
Yeah.
He came and taught at Oral Roberts Law School the semester before that summer and just really encouraged Chris to apply for an internship. Well, we got to Virginia that summer. We had just gotten married, and straight out of the honeymoon, we came to Virginia for the summer. And Chris's assignment that summer was to research every case law and statute that had to do with homeschooling.
Oh,
And
wow.
we're like, homeschooling, okay. I mean, we're sort of guessing what that meant, but he started digging in that summer. And by the end of the summer, he had put together this 450-page document that was everything on homeschooling from a legal and statutory perspective. But in the process of doing all that, we met other homeschooling families that summer. He did interviews and things like that. And so by the end of the summer, we had just gotten married. We weren't even talking about having kids, but we were like, we're going to homeschool. Yeah, we just became convinced that was what God wanted us to do.
That is so cool. When we were taken to court back in 1980, we talked to John Whitehead, but he didn't have the resources. He was just kind of getting started. He didn't know much about homeschooling. So when did Chris actually start working for him? What year was that?
Well, the summer we were there was the summer of 1984.
Okay.
And what came out of that relationship a couple years later, it was after Chris had started with Homeschool Legal Defense Association the summer of 1985. So at that point, he was HSLDA's first full-time attorney. But John Whitehead came back and wanted to write a book about homeschooling, which hadn't really been done, like sort of from a legal parental rights perspective. And so he had Chris doing all this research. And I remember the day Chris came home from their lunch to discuss this book idea for John to put his name on it. And Chris was like, man, I just worked so hard on this book. and when he came home that day, John Whitehead, had apparently said to him at lunch, Chris, you've done so much work on this book. You need to put your name on it.
Oh, wow.
And so he never put his name on it. And that became Homeschooling, the Right Choice. Was one of the first books on homeschooling from the legal parental rights, perspective.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that story. That is so cool.
Yeah, it was definitely a God thing.
It really was. So tell us about Chris's involvement with HSLDA. He was like 24 years, wasn't he, defending homeschool freedom in the US and all around the world? Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I have to give you one quick story so that, when people think of lawyers, they think of these, hotshot lawyers and, all this power and all this influence. And God wanted to write a different story. He wanted Chris to be part of the homeschool movement, but I really believe he wanted him to be part of something more because he loves families and he loves multi-generational faith and just strengthening the people that he's created. And he just wanted Chris to be part of that. It took Chris 3 times of taking the Virginia bar before he finally passed. And so he got hired by HSLDA, not having taken the bar yet, straight out of law school. And I remember, like going into the 3rd time, they were kind of like, yeah, Chris, you need to pass the bar or this job isn't gonna, you're not gonna be an attorney. And I remember right after Chris finally passed it the 3rd time, Virginia does have one of the hardest bars in the country because of so many subjects in that. But I remember after he passed it, he said, God told me right after I passed it, he said, the reason I had you go through this is so that you would never, ever boast in yourself. It's all about me and my power and my equipping. And he lived that. He demonstrated that for 24 years. At HSLDA, when he started in 1985, homeschooling was legal in 5 states. And so from 1985 to 1995, his primary goal was working with the state leaders and the legislatures and then other attorneys as they over time slowly joined HSLDA, and they had got more and more attorneys to make homeschooling legal in all 50 states. And by 1995, not only was it legal in all 50 states, but the last state that required teacher certification of parents in order to homeschool, which was Michigan, was they defeated that. And so it was the last state to drop that requirement so that parents no longer needed teacher certification in any state to be able to homeschool their kids. And so then once that climate was homeschool friendly across the nation, God really gave him a vision to export freedom around the world. And so he was instrumental in starting the National Center for Home Education. He was influential in starting the international relations of HSLDA, where we would work with other countries and homeschool leaders there to try to get homeschooling legalized in their countries. And since his passing in 2009, the attorneys at HSLDA have done a marvelous job of just continuing that, that early vision that he had in the early years.
That's amazing. I think some of these young homeschooling moms don't realize that there was a battle to allow homeschooling in states and then other countries. They're still in some countries today, but her husband, Chris, was just foremost in the battle for freedom, and he did an amazing job. Tracy, I know there are so many moms out there that are hurting with many challenging circumstances. Tell us a little bit about your story. I know you had twins. I know you had some of your own physical challenges, and then the story about Chris. Tell us.
Sure. Yeah. Interestingly, I think God used some things early on to help prepare us for even bigger struggles later. When I was pregnant with our first child is when I became very ill shortly after she was born. And it was, I had no idea what it was. We finally got the diagnosis that I had ulcerative colitis. And within less than a year's time, I remember she was not even a year old when I had had so much internal bleeding and had lost so much weight. Like 50 pounds in 5 months. I was so weak and sick that by Christmas, she had just, turned a year old the month before. I was almost wheelchair bound. I was so weak I couldn't walk and I couldn't eat anything. And basically I was wasting away. And we just were crying out to God. Here we had a new child, and this was before Chris had MS, but we were just desperate for God to help us and hold us up. And he did. He brought us through that season and gave us, basically gave us great hope for the future because he met us in that place. But we were also told we wouldn't be able to have any more kids because of my illness.
Wow.
And so I remember of the 7 kids we have, we did try to get pregnant with our second, Megan. And I remember when we went to the doctor and they did the ultrasound, like an external ultrasound, they couldn't pick up a heartbeat. And we just thought, oh, Lord, maybe this is really true. We're not going to be able to have any more kids. And so they had us come back like the next day, and they did an internal ultrasound and were able to detect the heartbeat. Wow. And we just cried. We just thought, Lord, we want to have more kids. And so Megan was, she was born healthy and everything. But then in 1994, when Chris started having his first MS symptoms, I got pregnant with what we thought was our 5th child. And his health started going downhill really quickly. And by Thanksgiving of 1994, he had an official diagnosis of MS, and it was the worst kind of MS. And it was just 3 days after that we had decided to kind of pull away and pray and just seek God and, what can we do? Is there anything we can do about this? That we found out that we were not expecting our 5th child. We were expecting number 5 and 6 and twins. And meanwhile, our youngest wasn't even a year old. And so now we were like, okay, this is kind of overwhelming, Lord. 4 kids, really young, and twins on the way, and husband with MS, and he's going downhill fast. And we just cried out to God. And there were thousands of people praying for Chris because of the MS. And then we found out the twin pregnancy was a high-risk pregnancy. And the smaller twin, because when they saw the twins in there, one looked normal, developed, the other one was like 8 weeks behind in development, and they were just predicting that she wouldn't survive. They did ultrasound, said they were girls, identical twins. One isn't going to make it, and so then we had thousands and thousands of people praying, and we were just leaning on the Lord for that. But God worked miracle after miracle, and those twins were born just a few weeks early. One 6 pounds, one 2 pounds, 13 ounces. She was a little peanut.
Oh.
But that was another, just like the Israelites, in the Old Testament, who would cry out to God for deliverance, and often when he would deliver them and work some miracle, they would set up these stones of remembrance to never forget what God had done. We felt like each one of those trials was giving us an opportunity to set up another stone of remembrance to the Lord, to not forget his mercy and his faithfulness through the hardship. And then Chris's MS, was a reality, but in the very early days, God just provided all kinds of resources for him to be able to try to fight it naturally. We changed diet. He started taking supplements. He, just a lot of different things that really did help out for many years before it became really severe and advanced.
I remember your big swimming pool.
Yes, we got those in the later years. It was like an exercise therapy pool, because he, couldn't walk. He had to use an electric scooter. And so it kind of gave him an opportunity to do some exercise that wasn't gravity based, and it really helped a lot. But the kids all had to chip in. I mean, you can imagine if you can't walk, there's a lot of limitations. So kids would have to help him get in and out of the pool and things like that. But it was a wonderful opportunity for our family to learn to serve one another.
Yeah. And your kids have such servants' hearts. They really do. All of them. So how were you able to homeschool amidst all that going on? How could you focus? How could you do it?
Yeah, there's a character in Hind's Feet on Hind's Places, The Much Afraid, and I sort of identified with that character a lot. There's a lot of fear in my heart, and so to combat that, it didn't suit me well to just try to give myself pep talks, to try to get through it. I really, really had to lean hard on the Lord. I had to say, God, I'm helpless. I can't do this. I need your help. And that just became a real daily prayer of my life. And I'm tempted to try to fix things myself. I tend to be a problem solver. I tend to be task oriented. Let's do this. We can do this. Jump in and do research. And, but so many times God allows us to be in a place where we can't rely on what he's innately built into us, because he wants us to walk by faith and he wants us to trust him. And so it sometimes would take really desperate looking situations for me to learn to lean on him. But looking back, those were the times of greatest strength in my heart and in my life, were through those really, really hard times. I think one thing for me that did become really important was my commitment to homeschool, my commitment and determination that even in the midst of hardship, the commitment was there, just sort of like in marriage. No marriage is perfect, and every marriage has seasons where it's harder than at other times. And if the commitment isn't there, then you're just going to be tempted to kind of, give in or whatever to pulling away in the marriage, or maybe even walking away from a marriage. So commitment is important. Obviously, homeschooling isn't like a marriage covenant, but when you make that commitment to homeschool, you need to know why, you're doing it, and have those reasons ever before you, because that helps when the hard times hit, to keep you sort of focused, determined, committed. And then also the other important lesson I feel like God was trying to teach me through the various seasons of hardship is that it's okay to get help. It's okay to lean on others. We like to give and help others more than receive help. Yeah. But God put us in this place where we were needing help like so much and for so long, that we came to really believe that God created the body of Christ to do both, to both graciously give in love and to graciously receive. And that's how he knits the body together, and that one isn't any better than the other. It's just how he made us to live in community. So help from friends, commitment, and then just focusing on what was most important. Because if we were going to continue to homeschool, our situation, because of the hardships, couldn't look like every other normal family. So we had to just say, okay, what's most important academically? What's most important emotionally and spiritually for our kids? Because if we elevate academics above everything else, they're going to be hurting in other areas. And so we didn't want to miss the opportunity to minister to them, to minister to their hearts, and to build them up in their faith through the hardship, because sometimes a hardship is only for a little season, and you can sort of have predictable trajectory through it. And your goal is, okay, here's the plan. We got to get through it. You got a surgery, you got a recovery, or you have a business setback, but it's only for a season or whatever. But when you have something like MS, it's very unpredictable, and you can't really make plans long term. And so it's this fine line of, okay, we want to plan to do things, but we also have to be ready to let them go. And so that was part of our children's, sort of training, is to enable them to not hold on to things too tightly and to trust God for everything that we needed as a family. I remember, if I can, time allows, one quick story.
Sure.
Just the unpredictability of MS and just having to let go. So I really wanted for my kids to have wonderful opportunities to just develop skills and abilities beyond the academics. And I remember one year our church was having like a Renaissance party, and my girls got all excited and they wanted to make their own Renaissance dresses, and they got the patterns and they made the outfits, and they were dressed the evening that we were going to the Renaissance party. And as we were getting into the van and helping Chris into the van, he fell and hit his head on the driveway, and boom, just like that door shut. And all of the planning and all of the work, that my girls had spent making those dresses, I didn't cry in front of them that night. When I went to bed, I cried, because it's like, Lord, this happens all the time. And yet God was reminding us that he can work even those things for good, and that he can use something that's such a disappointment for good. And they did get the benefit of learning how to sew and prepare, and but it's all about balance, and just trying to keep the big picture in mind. Focus on the small steps and just try to be faithful, and then trust God for the outcome.
Well, you've been an amazing example of relying on the Lord to be your strength. And I'm sure that was not easy so many times, like you just gave that example. Can you give a few more examples of how the Lord provided for you and the kids when Chris was physically unable to do things? Like, I know he really wanted to get out and, I don't know, play ball with the kids and do things like that, and he couldn't. So how did God provide?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier that one of the lessons God was teaching us was just how to look to others to help. And that was one of the things that he did in our lives, just through other homeschool families that we were in close relationship with, and church families. We would bring a need before him, and then he would bring friends to help, do something with one of the kids that he couldn't go and do. And or he would bring friends to give us rides or to help with projects, and then really a part of it, because Chris so much wanted to do so many things, that God seemed to be taking away. He wanted to take the kids camping and wanted to do hiking and different things, that sometimes the kids would have to do with other friends in order to have the experience. But at the same time, God was looking out for Chris, and he brought friends, godly men into his life to encourage him, like your husband Rick was so instrumental. Rick and two other men became like the three amigos for Chris in the last couple of years of his life. And honestly, I don't think Chris would have gotten through it. We wouldn't have gotten through it if it hadn't been for friends, not just physically helping us, but surrounding us with their arms, so to speak, and their prayers and their encouragement. And so that was huge.
Well, it was just amazing. He was so humble. You guys were all so humble, and it was humbling to know you and see you going through that. I know, sometimes some little thing will come into our lives and we're tempted to say, oh, I'm going to quit. I've got all this pressure, but you couldn't quit. I mean, you had tons of pressure on you constantly, and you just kept at it. Do you feel your kids are better people for having watched their dad suffer and being able to minister to him?
Absolutely. I know they struggle. They did struggle, and they even today still struggle some with some of the questions of why, and seeing, sort of when somebody you love deeply dies, there's a grieving process that you go through, and that's natural, and you need to allow yourself to do that. And the kids all had to do that. But even before their dad died and after their dad's death, they had to go through some grieving processes over what they couldn't experience or do because of the MS. And I, some of them have done a little better than others in that, but I've tried to just give the kids room to do that. And but the good, some of the amazing good that I've seen come out of seeing their dad suffer is watching him day by day depend on God, and watching him day by day just walk in humility, like you said, where that became a powerful example to them, to look to God and to not think more highly of themselves, because you just never know. You could be walking on top of the world one day and the next day have gotten in a car crash and you're paralyzed. You never know what life circumstances are going to be like. But what you can know is that God is always going to be there, right there with us, very intimately and personally involved in our stories, and faithful and merciful through it all. Sometimes those mercies are small mercies, but the kids understand that, and they model it in their relationships with others. They have empathy for others. They look for opportunities to serve others and give. That I really think is a big part of who they are, because of what their dad went through and watching how he went through it as toward the Lord, and not by himself.
I agree with that. I mean, I've watched your kids and they just have compassion for other people. A lot of times when kids are young, I don't know, they're on the top of the world. They think I can do anything and, I'm going to live forever kind of attitude. But your kids are compassionate to others who are hurting. I think the Lord has made them better people for having ministered to their dad and watching his attitude and his example. It's just amazing.
Well, and it's not a guarantee, but it should be an encouragement for every parent out there who's going through something that's difficult. And I know Chris wished he could change the situation for the sake of his kids, so that they wouldn't have to walk through the hardship too. And he sometimes felt frustrated that he couldn't. He had to just keep remembering God's goodness and God's sovereignty through everything. But it's also an encouragement for us that God doesn't waste any moment of our lives. And he uses even those situations that just look so messy and hopeless, that he can use them for good, not just in our lives, but in our children's lives. And it becomes an important part of their stories and their future, and how God is going to use them. So take encouragement, parents, that good can, there's that verse in Romans 8:28, all things work together for good to those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. And it sounds theoretical, but I can look back and see how God really has used the hardships for good, and it continues to do that in our lives.
Absolutely. Do you have any final words for moms who are out there struggling under overwhelming circumstances right now?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is regardless of what situation you're in right now that feels overwhelming and hopeless, you will get through this. You will get through this. God is right there with you and to help you get through this as well. Sometimes you're not going to feel it. Sometimes it's going to be a battle of the mind to believe it. But you are going to get through whatever situation that you are in. God will see to it that you do. And I just want to encourage moms to just don't beat yourself up for not doing all the things that you really want to be able to do for your family or in your homeschooling. Nothing surprises God. He knows what he's called you to walk through, and he knows that you are going to be able to do exactly what he's called you to do by his grace. And it may not be what we want to do. I cried many tears over broken dreams for our homeschool. I wanted to do unit studies and I wanted to do Charlotte Mason, and I had to simplify because of our family circumstances. But God knows this. And also, we just need to give ourselves grace, because he certainly gives us grace to walk through those things. And then the other things, not the only, but just a few other things is to not be afraid to ask for help. It's hard. If you're afraid to ask for help, pray that God would just bring help. And he usually does. I mean, he cares about you, and he's not going to call you to walk through something that he won't give you the support that you need to get through it. And then finally, just have the tenacity to be brave in your situation. And sometimes that may mean doing less than what you want to do. Sometimes that's what courage looks like for me, because I wanted to do more. I wanted to do so much. And I just had to have the courage to trust God that doing less was going to be enough for our family. And some of you may even need to stop homeschooling for a season so that you could focus on your family's bigger needs. And some people would say, oh, don't ever say that. But I can say that confidently, because if you are trusting God, he's going to give you a peace in the waiting season where you're just focusing on bigger needs, and he will give you the grace to be able to get back into the homeschooling, or to be able to continue to homeschool through the hardship like we did. Either one can be a faith-filled journey if you're looking to the Lord and trusting him.
Absolutely. Tracy, tell us, what's your ministry now with HSLDA?
Yeah, so I'm in an exciting season of life. I just passed my 11th year of working for HSLDA, and I started when they had a separate foundation called the Homeschool Foundation to help families who couldn't afford the cost of curriculum, including widows and single parents and low-income families, military families, families whose kids have special needs. And then in 2018, the foundation merged with HSLDA. So the development work I was doing for the foundation, I'm now doing for all of HSLDA. And it's a privilege to not only be able to help families through the fundraising work that I do, which make grants available, but also to be able to help fund in partnership with our donors, the legal and litigative work that HSLDA is working on. And then exciting, a lot of people who are members of HSLDA know the benefits from the legal standpoint, but they may not be aware of some of the support and equipping benefits of HSLDA. So HSLDA's consultants, and they're very much involved in outreach, not just to individual families, but to communities, to underserved communities, to families that have special needs, to families who've got kids from baby to college, and everything in between. And so it's a blessing to be part of the organization that Chris was a part of his entire career, and to be taking sort of a different slant on the service, but at the very heart of it all is serving homeschool families, because we both love homeschool families and what God is doing in their lives.
That's amazing. I encourage you guys to join HSLDA, even if you think I would never need their services, because we were taken to court back before there was HSLDA. And I can tell you it's scary and it's lonely. And HSLDA is there to support you and to help you to deal with school boards or anything that comes into your path. and they're bulldogs watching our freedom, and we need that so much. I totally tell everybody I talk to, join HSLDA, because it is so worth it. Even if your kids are grown, you'll help others, because it's just an amazing organization. So tell us, would we do that? If somebody wants to join, Tracy, or how would they do that?
Yeah, you can just go to hslda.org. There's several links that I'm sharing besides the membership side of things. There are some links to get free resources. And if you're a family, like a low-income family that just really needs help with the cost of curriculum, there's a link there that you can go to check out applying for a grant for your homeschooling costs. So that's another resource available to you.
That's amazing. And what is the cost if they want to join HSLDA? Join by the year, right?
Yes, yep. And you can either join by year, and you can do it as a monthly payment plan or all one time, and it's $130 a year. However, there are group discounts available. So if you're homeschooling in your state and you've got a state organization or a regional homeschool group that you're a part of, there's a good chance you can get a discount on the cost of your HSLDA membership. And then if you are a low-income family and can't afford an HSLDA membership, HSLDA is very generous, and they also give out need-based financial aid for families to have an HSLDA membership. So if you go to either the hslda.org site or to the link to hslda.org/compassion, you can learn more about getting financial assistance, even for membership.
Wow, that's amazing. What is Team Possible?
Team Possible, I'm glad you brought that up. So Team Possible is our monthly giving community. So we have a lot of families who had been members or have been members of HSLDA for a long time, and perhaps they've graduated their kids, but they still want to support HSLDA. And rather than continue an active membership, which they don't really need, Team Possible is a way to give financially to HSLDA tax deductibly through a monthly donation that enables us to be able to provide those grants to families, as well as engage in the extra litigative and legal work that we do.
Wow, that's something for me, because we graduated our last one, so I need to do that. Just tell us briefly a little bit more about ministry to single moms and special needs.
Okay, so HSLDA has a special heart for moms who are homeschooling alone. With a membership, you get to take advantage of all of the consulting services that HSLDA provides. And unlike some homeschool organizations that provide service, HSLDA's consulting service is very personal. It's one-on-one, it's confidential. And these consultants that HSLDA have been around for many, many years. They're homeschool moms themselves, so they've got firsthand experience, and they can help you with anything from toddler years all the way up through college and beyond. Excuse me. And for single moms, we try to provide financial assistance as well if you qualify for that, just because we know it's harder to homeschool alone. And we're actually looking at possibly partnering with state organizations and regional groups to provide mentoring for families. We really want to see families be able to succeed. And sometimes just having another homeschool mom as a mentor is something that makes all the difference in the world. So that's something we're still praying about and seeking the Lord about, but we realize that the power of mentors and friends is really significant. And then special needs, again, I go back to the consultants and what the consultants can provide. If you go to hslda.org, up at the top, there's several categories, but there's one about teaching your kids. And under there's a whole section on teaching kids who have special needs and resources available. We can even point you to professionals who provide testing and evaluations if you're trying to get a diagnosis for a child's specific need. And then again, if you're in a financially tight situation, we can also provide assistance for the cost of curriculum for special needs kids, as well as be able to provide assistance for things like testing and therapies and stuff like that. So definitely check
Wow.
that out.
That's amazing. They keep adding services. That's very exciting. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been so encouraging. I know you've helped so many people. Thanks for joining us.
No, I'm so glad to be here, Marilyn. And thank you for all you're doing to encourage moms in the day-to-day with your podcast. You've got years and years of experience, and your heart for families is just so huge. And so I know many, many moms and families are really blessed by what you're doing. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I love young moms, love to encourage them. Like you say, you can do it. So
that's right.
God's
You
help.
can do it. That's right. Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much. And
All
we're
right.
going to provide links down below in the show notes so that you can contact HSLDA. Tracy will give us those links. So feel free to use them, please. Thanks again, Tracy.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye
Bye-bye.
now.